but it does give you what it does is it forces you to interpret every note and figure out how you feel about it. What does it relate? How does it relate to the notes around it? And it's all about this diminution kind of relationship. What's embellishing what? So here's a piece. Okay, so you all know? you know this thing. So let's just see how you would approach this from a Schenkerian kind of perspective. Well, it is about tonal motion. So in the melody, what you're looking for is, because melodies tend to give you a sense of closure when they descend, and most of all when they descend by step, you're looking for that direct route to closure. Now the melody's going to do this. It's going to wind around, it's going to go this way and that, but you're looking for a basic underlying stepwise approach to the end. You remember that? We saw that in the A minor. It goes all over the place. But if you realize that there can be a compound melody involved, there's a pretty clear-cut descent going on there, right? We sang it. It went right down by step. He's looking for that because he's going to say that brings closure. Everything else is fancy, nifty stuff added on top of that basic structure. Okay, so there's our half cadence. We'll just take it that far today. Okay, so let's get the bass in there too, because he's all about how the two parts interact with one another. Okay, so melodically, what's our goal? Where are we headed? Well, scale degree. Eventually 1, but here, since it's a half cadence, 2, scale degree 2. So we're going to highlight certain notes by stemming them, and important notes we will beam together to show. It's called a Zug in German, but it's a linear progression or a stepwise descent is what it is. Okay, so that's melodic progression. In this way of thinking about things, is stepwise descent. That's a melodic progression. Now there are also other kinds of linear progressions, but for closure, for the end of a phrase, once we say, hey, this is a phrase, we can demonstrate the closure by showing a descent to this point. So you back up from there. You notice what I'm doing? I go to the end, find the goal, and then say how we got there. That's what you do. So now I'm looking for embellishment of main notes that move down by step. See what I'm after? Stepwise descent to scale degree 2. That's our goal. Can you back up further? Well, yeah, what about this note? Or which one should it be? Okay, well, we need to decide that using the harmony. What's the main note? Use the harmony to decide. All right, what's the chord? C, E, maybe a G in there. We're in B flat. So what's this? Here's my 5, 6, 4, 5, 3. What's this? Put the C in there.
E flat?
But since I've got the C in there, it's a
C.
2,
2.
6. That's a chord tone, isn't it? That's not. What's that called? You leap to it, step down?
Neighbor.
Neighbor, incomplete neighbor, isn't it? Okay, so we will not mark this note. We're not going to, now I don't need to do anything around it. What I really want to do is I want to do this. I want to stem that as the main note. Okay, so I'm looking for descent, I'm looking for stepwise motion down, and I want to relate all these other notes to this framework. So do you see what I've already done? That's a slur. Slurs show relationship. Well, this is obvious, right? It's the same note coming back after neighboring motion. That's easy. This is an incomplete neighbor, so you show, well, it attaches there. It belongs to, it decorates that note, and the slur shows that belonging. So those are two very different kinds of belonging. One is, this is an incomplete neighbor to that. This shows neighboring motion, but the slur shows that those two notes belong together because they belong to the same chord. It's a cadential 6/4. Okay, harmonically what we do is we say, here's the goal of that phrase, and we put a big fat stem on there. That's the predominant, that's pretty big, but it's subordinate to it. So, see, they're both prominent, but one's shorter, you get it? Shorter just means, the eighth note, means that it's not as significant for bringing closure. Do you need a predominant? No, you don't have to have it. So, you do need this though, right? You need the dominant or you don't have any kind of closure at all. So then we have to relate the subordinate things to the more stable things. So we go, again, that belongs to that. See, it's the same concept. This relates to this, so this relates to that. Same thing. Get it? It's a wild thought. It's very abstract in a way. But no, that relates by step to there. Leap, step. Okay? So what are the essential harmonies? Really essential for opening and closing phrases?
1 and 5.
You need 1 and 5. So 1s and 5s, the one that kicks it off and the 1s and 5s that close it out, those get big. See? So you say, okay, that's sort of like the structural framework. And now we're going to try and relate everything to, now you know what? I need to back up one more here too, because I can see that everything started from this note right here. That scale degree 5, and it moves down by step across this whole phrase. And we can do this, beam them all together to show that that is a linear progression. That is the fundamental descent, but it's interrupted because you would want it eventually to get to 1, right? We need the next phrase to do that. We're not going to do that right now because we don't have time. Now, everything else we do is relating the details of this phrase back to that basic skeleton. It's fleshing it out, okay? That's our game. So use what you know here. If this is a 1 chord, and yeah, it brings in a scale degree 6 here, and this is a 2 chord, and this is 5 going to 4-2 back to 1-6, 5-6 1. Use the phrase model to sort of give you a leg up. Now, Schenker wouldn't have done it like that, but we can. So I could say, here's my tonic. Do functions for me real quick. 2 is a predominant, dominant, and then back to tonic. But wait, you see? It's inverted. That's not over. So what I want to try and do is show that this, on a small scale, is a melodic and harmonic motion. I want to show the motion involved here. Well, I see that this 2 chord could serve as like the bass note for this whole business. And generally that's what we're going to do. We're going to take the predominant and dominant and see them as sort of working together. I'm going to join them. And then I get back to scale degree 3 over here. You see how I'm looking for process? How do I get back to it? That is a straight shot. So I'm going to go, okay, this goes to here through this note right there. I can explain these as relating as if they were upper parts to this note right here. They belong up above it. I think I might be better off doing something like assuming that there's a 5th in that chord and moving there, but I'm not going to deal with all that detail. Basically, I want to connect notes back to that root. Okay, now I have a new note here. How does this note, scale degree 4, relate to this?
It's the leading tone to 5, isn't it?
Well, it's not a leading tone because we reserve that
Chord
for
out
third.
dots right now.
Say again?
Chord third.
Chordal third. So as long as it's the same chord, we can relate it back. Now, you might be tempted to do this, and I think that's appropriate. But I can still relate that back to this and think, okay, I'm going to think of the chord as basically a 5 chord. 5, 4, 2. maybe 5, 4, 3 even, starting right here, and I can take all those notes. I'm trying to assimilate notes, trying to pull them all in, and I can take them all into the orbit of a 5 chord there. I could even see this as passing motion, and that would show it. So 5 relates back to this. But the main thing is I want to show this to this to this. And I want to be able to relate all these notes back to more structural things around them. Let me show you what that would mean for the melody. Here's a fancy way to deal with this. I could view this as compound melody with a couple different lines going on. Those belong to the same chord, so I'm using the slur to show that they belong to one another. This is scale degree 4 and 6. They belong to the 2 chord down here. I think this one's more stable than that, so I'm going to go with the 4. See what I'm doing? I want to be able to trace any note back to something more stable. I think I would like to do inner voice implied here. So it goes 1, 7, 1, so I'll go like that to relate that line together. This, watch this. See how this embellishes? We already worked through this, but these are all going to be that way, so that these are incomplete neighbors, appoggiaturas really. So these are main notes, and you're moving, passing through this one to that. So the slur shows connection. You know what? There's a corresponding situation down here. Don't write too much. I'll take a picture of it, and you'll have it online, so don't think you got to catch everything. But if you just kind of get the gist of my thought process, that's all you can really expect to get right now. You're not going to get it in the night. Don't think, 5 minutes. We're already probably way over. I don't know. What are we at? Oh, we're out of time right now. Stick with me and I'll just follow through with this thought. Okay, so here, if I move, do you see what's going on? What would we do phrase model-wise? Harmonic function. What's going on right here?
Put a parentheses around it. It's all tonic
Ah,
sounding.
Okay, now what do I do? It's all tonic. How does that embellish?
No, it's a incomplete neighbor.
Incomplete neighbor, okay, so that's an incomplete neighbor there. And to show that, I want to show that this belongs to what?
The one before, the D.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. Now, but I need to explain this a little bit more. What's that relate to?
The B flat.
B flat.
More to this
Leading to
one.
B
Okay,
flat.
so the 7, 3, 7. I want 3 is the main note. 3, 2, 1. Okay, 3, 1 is the main thing. 3, 7, 1, and that shows that interpretation of it. Now that one's pretty straightforward. We have a hard time arguing with that. Now I can see that I'm basically dealing with motion back to tonic. Keep sticking around tonic, but elaborate it a little bit. But I haven't really done that big picture here. I can see it quickly here because I see those slurs relating this 1 to the, going through the 2 to the 3, back to the 1. That's clear cut, you see? But it's not so clear cut up here. Now the inner voice is clear cut, but what about the implied uppermost part? It's going 3, 4, 3 maybe? So I could do this and view these as 5, 4, 3 on a bigger scale. Now my goal is that I can just sit down randomly on some note and be able to trace it back to more stable, more stable, more stable, more stable, ultimately stable elements. If I do it well, that's what it should look like. Okay, so here's, I'll get to your question. What's that? So if I take this note, I go scale degree 3, stable? No, it's an incomplete neighbor to this, which is a passing tone between these two guys. That's what that slur is. Okay, so in the end, it's really relating here. It's moving up to this note, which is, oh yeah, that's coming from here, which is part of this opening time. You see how I can trace it all the way back?
Yeah.
You're basically giving a route back to say that is a special note because it embellishes this, which then belongs to this, and eventually you say, oh, well, that eventually gets you back to the opening tonic or the closing. Yeah.
Okay, where you said it would be scale degree 3, which would be in our measure 3.
This one? Or
Um,
this?
The B. Yeah, I mean the D. No, yeah, the last one. Sorry. Sorry.
D, okay.
Okay, why would it not be the next D in the music? Because that one is a longer duration. And it
Oh,
seems like
oh,
it would
oh.
be more stable, like,
Well,
which,
this creates the closure,
okay,
and as a default, what you do is if you see motion by step earlier than that,
you
so
mark the
that could have
first.
been a unit, that's back to tonic.
Okay,
But in this context, that motion, yeah, it elaborates this opening tonic, but it doesn't bring closure because it's eroded here.
mhm,
And you see that voice exchange there?
mhm,
He's messing around with tonic still. So when you show this kind of thing, you're only doing that to show how you arrive at closure.
okay,
Now, there's the potential here, but in hindsight, we know that that 3 does not go to the 2 directly.
right,
It has to get to this predominant entity, and that's what gets us to closure. So that is a descent. That is getting down over a long span there.
mhm,
This we're thinking of as the uppermost note. That's the soprano in this measure. You see how that compound melody helps us understand Schenker's thinking here.
mhm,
This is what we're calling the main note. It's prominent. It's on the downbeat.
mhm,
And it relates by step to these guys.
mhm.
We find a stepwise relationship there. So that is a descent, but we're saying it's not the thing that brings closure, because that closure is eroded by what's going on harmonically in the bass there.